What's up, my dudes? This is a consistency guide to MX Simulator. So I think consistency is probably 80% of winning the race, and speed is about 20% of it. That's a pretty good calculation. I know I'm this fucking scientist over here that's always trying to add up percentages and shit like that, but it really is. Like, it's a lot more important than you would think, man. It's crazy. Consistency, whenever they say it's everything, they pretty much mean it. I mean, obviously, you can't be going at a snail's pace out there and expect to win just from being consistent and going really slow, but it's very true, though, because when you crash in this game, you could lose anywhere from, 5 seconds to 10 seconds. It all depends on, you can crash off the track and get stuck on some off-track object. Trust me, it happens, and it's pretty embarrassing when it happens in a pro race, but you can hit those little fucking stripper poles on the side of the tracks over there where they're like the yellow beams, and you can get stuck on those. I crashed in a pro race one time, hit one of those poles, and I was stuck on that thing for like seriously probably 30 seconds, and that's like a whole race. So it's a lot more than just crashing and like resetting like it might be for reflex or something like that. It can be devastating whenever you crash in this game. So especially when you lose position, then you got to try to pass people back. It screws everything up. So with this game, you don't want to be like Stewie and just crashing your bike in every other corner. It's one of those where you can be like a Dungy, but the problem with being like a Dungy is if you get a bad start, then you're just never going to catch up to the front. You want to be more like a Villapoto, where you're a mixture between Stewart and Dungy, where you're kind of like being able to push it when you need to and not when you don't. And I know that shit sounds simple, but trust me, it's the whole game, really. Once you get to the pro level, everybody's wide open. Anybody can run a fast lap. That's nothing. The thing that separates the men from the boys is being able to run a hot lap for 8 laps straight or 6 laps straight. And the thing that separates the legends from the men is being able to run hot laps for 20 laps straight without crashing. So that's your whole game once it gets to the pro level. Now in like '03 and stuff, this is a really big misconception and kind of a confusion, I think. Like '03 racing and stuff like that, you can crash and still do pretty well. I mean, you can crash 2 or 3 times and still do pretty well because your talent pool is just not there. But when you get 20 dudes on the gate that all are pretty good at the game, you can't afford to crash. It changes the whole dynamic of it. I can't tell you how many times I've seen people that think they're something when they can just run out there and run one fast lap. There's people that can run faster laps than me in '03, and I will literally lap them in a racing scenario. They cannot run it for more than one lap. Nowhere even close. There's so many people out there like that. Trust me, it's way easier to run a fast lap than it is to run 8 solid laps. Way easier. I'm talking like mountains easier to just run one fast lap. Really, anybody can do that. That's not even that hard to do. Because you just go out there and balls up and hit something that you wouldn't normally hit, and that kind of goes into like when you're trying to be consistent, you got to know, like, it's like this little bit of a instantaneous sort of calculation that runs through your mind where you think, okay, I've got the speed to hit this jump, or I've got the momentum out of the corner to hit this big jump, or if you spin out a little bit, you've got to be able to make that split-second decision to let off, because I promise you it's always better to let off and hit a smaller line or lose a little bit of time like that than it is to try to hook it and crash and lose way more time from doing that. You're just trying to minimize, like, if you bust off the track, what's really cool about MX Simulator is you can kind of like crash without crashing, if you know what I'm saying. Like, there's kind of 2 different ways you can crash in this game. You can sort of like fall over where you kind of drop the handlebars, but you're not actually dismounted off of the bike, and the dude kind of picks the bike up really quick when he does that. Or you can crash, and if it like actually hits any part of your rider, or you get a lot of like G-forces, it'll actually dismount the rider, and that's when your legs pop off, and so then he's got to go through that full animation to pick the bike back up. So you're wanting to avoid that full dismount at all costs. So if you come up short on like a triple and you case it and you're bouncing all over the track, don't get all crazy and try to like hit the gas and hit another triple. You know what I mean? You want to like slow your roll down so that you don't end up having an even bigger crash. And another big thing about consistency is lappers. Oh my God, could that have happened at any better of a time? Dude, it's, my goodness. And trust me, I've totally got to the point where lappers no longer faze me. It no longer annoys me. But to any sort of beginner or amateur that starts getting kind of good at this game, and you start playing in 03 or even pro races, I mean, lappers, oh my gosh, dude. It is like, I just don't see how they just, the bike will not stay straight for a lapper for whatever reason. I don't know what the deal is with that, but and it seems like 90% of lappers out there, they think they have the right of way. So like, and I don't know if it's just them not seeing you or what it is, but the fact of the matter is that especially in 03 where there's really no consequences, lappers don't give a fuck. Dude, they think they have the right of way. So, and that's not the way it should be, but that's the way it is. So you got to suck it up and be a man about it, basically. That's what you got to do. If you want to win a race, you got to give the lappers a right of way. If they're acting crazy like they just own the whole track and they're just, riding all over the place and not getting out of your way at all, you can either A, get upset about it and try to pass them real quick and crash both of you, or B, you can let off the gas for about 2.5 seconds and then they'll wad it up and you can pass by them because they're not going to survive for very long going that speed. So you just got to be smart with lappers, and you got to know like when to hit the gas to try to avoid a lapper. Stuff like that definitely comes into play a little bit, but yeah, man, it's just, lappers is one of those things. It will make you, like, that's probably the most frustrating part about this game, period, bar none. Just like, because the racing is so close, that's the problem. Like when you get to a really good level, the racing is so close and you can spend 8 laps of not crashing whatsoever, running perfect lines. Let's just say you run 7 laps perfectly in front of somebody else and you may have gained like 6 or 7 seconds on them. If it's somebody else that's really good at the game, you may have gained like, 6, 7, something seconds like that. And then all of a sudden you can have a lapper over here on the last lap that just blows you out of the water, and then that dude will pass you. Even though you ran 7 perfect laps to get that far ahead, you can lose it in just a split second from a lapper. So it's like the consequences for crashing with a lapper is unreal. It's like what it'll cost you whenever you're racing against somebody that's really competitive. Whoops, meant to have this in third person. Come on, Spencer. But yeah, like, dude, I promise you, it's way better of your interest to focus on the big picture in the race. That's a key to being consistent. You want to focus on the big picture, the big scenario. You never want to get caught up too much in little battles and trying to take somebody out or trying to get somebody back or something like that, because meanwhile, while you're over there farting around with some Joe Blow over here and you're taking each other's front ends out in every other corner, you got Hunter Root over here blowing you out of the water, leading the race by 30 seconds. So you can't fuck around, you can't mess around with those little battles. You're trying to win the war. That's what you're doing, especially in a championship scenario. You're minimizing damage. I mean, you're going to have times where, you just get hit on the start and you go down and you got to come back from dead last. That's just going to happen. Because in this game, there's really no consequence for crashing as far as, like, pain. So, because it's a video game, obviously, and you just get right back up. So, I mean, there's a lot of people that become Iron Man instantly and become the Incredible Hulk and think they can hit the gas on the start even though they don't have the skill at all. So, that happens frequently. So, you got to watch out for those bonsai bros where they all of a sudden get nuts of steel out of nowhere and even though they're really not at that pace at all, so then they become sketchy. So you got to watch out for people like that. But yeah, man, just as far as like staying consistent and being able to run laps, it's just the number one thing that'll help you doing that is running a bunch of laps. That's the only explanation for it. Obviously, once you get your suspension a little more dialed in, that can definitely help. As far as like just saving you from certain crashes and things like that. But yeah, it's knowing what your limit is, man, and knowing how to go right over your limit when you need to and tone it down a half of a notch when you need to. It gets really technical there, but you got to always keep the big picture in mind. So if you screw up in a couple little sections, I mean, that could cost you 3 or 4 positions in a pro race, but as long as you don't crash and then go back to 12th, that's way better. So you've always got to kind of like minimize every little bit of damage that could happen in a consistency type scenario. And I mean, of course, we would all want to have speed and consistency, but it's hard to have both, man. Not a lot of people have both. I'm telling you, like it does not happen often. And what happens is you'll get somebody that's like a Villapoto over here, which is good at hammering it hard and then good at toning it down when he needs to. And then you'll get a Stewart dude over here that's like amping it up more than the Villapoto guy. So then it makes the Villapoto guy kind of amp it up even more, and then the Villapoto guy might make a mistake at that point. So it's it becomes very difficult when it gets like that. You want to always stay with your own sort of skill level. I mean, it's okay to push with other people. Trust me, that's a good way to improve your speed and stuff like that. But you don't want to look at somebody else's lap time or something crazy like that and go, okay, let me just all of a sudden try to want to run that every lap. You got to kind of know your own self. You got to know yourself. That's running through the 6 with my woes. You really do, man. Like, it's not a joke. You got to know yourself. You got to be one with the bike. You got to know what it's going to do, and you just get in a flow, especially with Supercross. You're not even really thinking. I mean, you're just doing. You're not thinking, really. That's the thing. You can overthink it, and you can override a track. Like Supercross tracks, if you just try to hammer it wide open in a straightaway, you're probably going to blow right off the end of the track. So there's a limit there, but what will make you fast on like a Supercross track is being able to just keep the flow in the corners without spinning and being able to like cut corners and do stuff like that. That's what makes you fast on a Supercross track. It's not so much about raw speed as much as it is like technical. Whereas like motocross, it's a little different. It is a little bit more about raw speed in motocross, but yeah, it's just when you start overriding tracks, that's where it'll fuck with your mind, because in your mind you're like, okay, I'm going faster and faster and faster, and I've got to be getting faster lap times, but in reality you're overriding it and you're not being smooth, so then therefore you're getting a slower lap time. So it's like you've got to find a balance with every aspect of it. But yeah, man, consistency, it's not easy to learn. It's something that some people never get. They never get it. And being able to do it in a pro race scenario with all the nerves and everything like that adds a whole nother element to it. And being able to like race other people and dodge other people, that's another big part. But the start is everything. I know your grandmama and everybody says it, but it really is. If you can get the start, it's like unreal, because 90% of your crashes in pro racing is just simply from somebody else's. Somebody else making a mistake, or somebody else's crash right in front of you and you can't do anything and you just end up crashing because of them. That happens so much, and it's very frustrating because it's like, I didn't even make the mistake. Somebody else did, but then I had to pay for it. So that's why the start is like so critical, because when you get the start, those little grenades out in the middle of the track are not as apt to explode you when you've only got 1 or 2 possibilities of that happening in front of you, instead of being like mid-pack and everybody's everywhere. And a lot of people, they just don't have any patience. They're just like, they think that once they're right behind you, they can just blow you out of the next corner. So you've always got to be prepared for that type of rider at all times, because it can happen. So you just, if somebody's crazy on your tail and they're like about to blow you out of every corner, I mean, hey, man, it's not that big of a deal if they pass you. You got to know when to kind of let people pass you if they're, because the Supercross track, especially on the 16s, they're so tight that it's hard to pass somebody without taking them out. It really is. So you got to know when you're about to be passed. Know if somebody's like riding right down your tailpipe for 5 laps straight, like they're probably going to get around you. And it's okay if they get around you, then follow their lines. Don't fight it too much. Don't try to protect too much, or your ass is going to get taken out in a hurry. Like that's when people take you out, is when you're blocking them, like you're severely blocking their line. And you can, if you just don't swerve left and right everywhere, you'll end up saving yourself from crashes and stuff like that way more often. So that's a big tip. But yeah, man, just got to put the time in, and that's how you get consistent. You don't think too hard about it. It's just you let your mind do the work. Don't think so much. That'll screw you, dude. It's all mind, muscle memory. It's just like walking. You don't even think about it. But anyways, I appreciate you guys watching all these videos. Later, dudes.